Good day, everybody, and hope you're all doing fine wherever you are. Do let me know in the chat room if you are doing something interesting today. I am sitting here in Iceland, and today is a lovely day as well. We are having the sun out. It's balming -3 degrees Celsius outside, so it's cold, but it's sunny, so that's good. Today on the Not Invented Here show, and I can give you a slight intro at some point to why I chose that name. We're going to continue with the walkthrough through the Blazing Pizza tutorial we started last Wednesday. We got about halfway through the second chapter, and but before we do that, I realized that I actually didn't introduce myself really ever last time. So anybody who sort of jumped in on the channel and might not know who I am, let me just get that out of the way this time around. So, who am I? I'm Egil Hansen. I live in Iceland, and the picture behind me is from the local harbor here in town. I am a principal developer in a consultancy company called Delegate, who is located in Denmark, but we actually cover different countries around Europe and are part of a bigger consultancy group based in the Netherlands. And besides that, I'm a Microsoft MVP for developer technologies, and I'm also the creator of the Blazor testing framework called bUnit, which we will be using during the stream. So thank you all for joining, and let's have some fun together. So let's just get reacquainted with where we were the last time. So I'll jump over to my main screen now, and we can go and find the Git repo we were working on. I made a few changes since last time to it, because I think it would be great if at some point the tutorial, the text that follows each of the chapters in the tutorial could be updated with, I guess, our version based on testing things and writing tests along the way as well. So let's see, here we have it. So what I've done is I've pushed a few save points. The first save point is updated now to include the test project, but without any test in it. So if you want to follow along with the previous stream, you can start with getting started save point. And also the components and layout save point has been updated as well with the progress up to that. Where we are right now is we are working on the customize a pizza save point, and I have a branch for that on my fork of the Blazing Workshop, where the progress we've made last time is available, and we will continue with that. So, one second. Excuse me. So, let's start by finding the notes for the second save point. So I think I have to go out here and find the docs. Oh yes, here we go. Customize a pizza. So, and I can also fire up the application, and let me zoom in a bit. I think 150 was the sweet spot last time. Yep, let me know if the font is not great, chat room. Okay, so if we run the application, let me spin it up. We can quickly see where we are at. So basically the first save point, the layout and pizzas, gives us this listing. Then on the second part, the second save point, which we are on right now, we are supposed to add this customizing dialog where you are able to change the size of the pizza and so on and so forth. So let's, and also obviously enable these buttons. They don't do anything right now. So let's jump down to where we ended up, and I believe it was here. Implement custom pizza dialog. No, actually it was, well, let's go and look at the code instead of me guessing. So we have this bit, that's this one here, and we have showing set to true. Okay, so we are actually showing this pizza dialog, but yeah, there's no functionality as the code says. I can also zoom in a bit here. Is the text in the browser high enough, guys? Large enough for you to read? Okay. Okay, Conficient. I see that if you can read it on a mobile, then I think we are fine. That's good. Okay. So let me just get my windows up correctly. 1 second. Just need to readjust a few things here. Get myself back to the dashboard at Twitch so I can actually manage things. Okay. Yep. Okay. Yes, we are here. Okay. So the next bit we need to do is set up the data binding, and we have our index page. It uses a custom dialog, and we have a configure pizza dialog tests method where we just ensures that it renders that correctly with the pizza passed into it. And we are using auto fixture, as you might remember from last time. And by the way, great. And if you guys, if you have any questions or comments along the way, just shout out in the chat channel. I'll try to look over there as often as I can, remember, and answer your questions as needed. Okay. Anyway, so data binding. The user should be able to specify the size of their pizza, add markup to the body of configure pizza dialog for a slider that lets the user specify the pizza size. This should replace the existing form dialog element. Okay, so let's read on a little bit to make sure we understand what we should write a test for. Now that the dialog shows a slider, we can use it to change the pizza size. However, it doesn't do anything right now as you use it. Okay, we want the value of the pizza size to reflect the value of the slider. When the dialog opens, the slider gets its value from the pizza size. Moving the slider should update the pizza size stored in pizza.size accordingly. The concept is called two-way binding. Yes, okay. If you want to implement two-way binding manually, you could do so by combining the value and add change as in the following code. Okay, so they're basically showing us how to do two-way binding. I'm going to skip over that text. But if we add the use bind with no further change, the favor is yeah, okay, so we wanted actually to update while we're dragging and dropping it. So they want us to use the on input instead of on change. Okay, and we end up here. Okay, so the basic test we want to write is a test of adding a slider, and so I guess that's two tests. There's a test where we verify that the slider actually reflects the value of the current value of pizza.size, and then there's a test that verifies that if we change the slider, then the value is also correctly updated in the pizza.size property. Okay, so let's give that a try. So I'm gonna copy paste a little bit because the editor here in Razor isn't particularly fond of the inline syntax here. The inline, what's it called again? Inline render fragment syntax. So sometimes when I add a semicolon or basically runs the format command, it completely messes up the formatting. So I'm really rooting for the guys who are building a new Razor engine for Visual Studio to improve on that experience. Anyway, the configure, let's just write dialog correctly shows the size input slider. Yeah, naming is hard. Let's see if we can figure out a better name at some point. So I just need to go and have a look and see what pizza is. So we have size, and size has to be one of these three. Oh, sorry, no, it has to be size between 9, 17, or 12. And okay, so here's the problem with we are getting a pizza in from AutoFixture that have a size set that is just random. So let's actually just default that to its to a legal value, which would be pizza.default size. Yeah, and here you see the auto formatting. I added a semicolon and then it tried to help me out here. Okay, I don't really want this markup. I do want to replace this form with something else. I think in this test up here, we can actually we can do something differently. We can just say diff ignore. So now we don't really care about what's inside the form. This is just showing us, this is just basically that we correctly render the basic structure of the, we correctly render the basic structure of the dialog. And then, but we don't really care what's inside the form element. We will take care of that in the following tests. So what I want to assert now, I don't want to have all of this because we already sort of covered that in the basic test up here. So we can say, let me get my form element out and just work on that. Which markup matches should be. And if we go back here and actually find our input, let's just have a look. Where was it? It was, so they want us to have a layout like this. Okay. And yeah, that actually might work out quite well to have it down here instead of up on the next line. Yeah, I actually like that because it takes up less space and less vertical space. Oh, nope. That's not what I want. Move you back. New key bindings. I know what's going on. It's because I have word wrap on. Let's turn that off. Word wrap. Yep, that helps. So now I can multi-select. Oh, too much. Oh man. That is probably, let's get the last bits done. Now that I've gone into cleanup mode already. So 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. That looks about right. And we can wait a minute. No, this has to be in a little bit. Okay, now we have the right structure. Hello, Copper Beardy. Thank you for joining. Let's see. So we have a div, and we have this div, form div. Okay, so this should ignore anything that's inside of here and then all the attributes on it, just because that's not really part of what this test is doing. We will verify the form down in this test. And let me put this up here. Okay. So what we actually want, we want not to pitch or pitch a maximum size, that's right. Step 1, minimum size, and we want to have not pizza.size, but and it has to be the actual pizza object. So now everything is working. So let's run all the tests and just quickly see that this one up here should still pass. Okay. Add pizza. Okay, yeah, something went wrong when I was reformatting here. Let me switch to my right keyboard layout. Okay, let's see if that helps. Build succeeded. No! And we have a failure, but I am expecting one of them to fail. Yep, this one fails. This one does not. Okay, so this is expected because we are actually not setting the form element at this point. So let's do that. But actually, so this was just sort of to show how to do it one way. Let's jump down and say we actually want it to be configured like this, our input element. This is what they want us to end up with. So let's add that. Well, actually we don't really want to do all the binding in here of the event handler. Otherwise it's gonna do it twice, I guess, which is not really great. So what we might want to do instead is want to I expect you to have the value bound to the pizza dot size right now. So that should be set correctly. So let's run this test again and just see what the expected output is. Go! I'm gonna start up my Zoom tool so you guys can also see what's going on down there. So as you can see, we are expecting this form element to show up. Obviously we're missing some bits. What I like is that we are also validating that the value is set correctly without actually doing the binding. So I do see some potential I guess confusion or issues if you are actually, I guess in theory you could use the add bind in this test test as well, because you are actually doing this is just Razor inside a C# class. So you have to be careful actually not to bind the pizza twice, both in the component and in the test. Yeah, Christopher, I kind of it's sort of a fun little thing I have. I like to have that dough with me whenever I whenever I mess up my test. I am considering adding also another one from him where he complains a bit when I have a build error. That might be useful as well, just to keep me on my toes. Anyway, let's see if we can get him to woohoo a little bit for us. So let's go and implement this feature in our configure pizza dialog. So for that we need to replace this bit here with with this part. And I guess we also want to add, let's just do it one step at a time. So pizza.size, like so, and rerun the test. Let's see if things behave as we expect them to. They do. Okay, so our test passes again. So the next step is to write a test where we see that when we change the slider, it also updates the pizza. So let's do that. Okay, so over here in our tests, let's just copy paste and dialog. Dialog update pizza size when size slider is dragged. So actually we're not gonna do a drag, but we can emulate with bUnit the invocation of the change handler, meaning we will basically emulate the on input events that the on input event. So we can sort of trigger that, and then we will want to see our component correctly update the pizza element. So I think it's fine to start with the default size again. Instead of doing this, I'm gonna go ahead and say we're gonna find inside the form element, we're gonna find the input element again. Find the input element instead. And instead of testing for markup, here we are going to invoke a helper method called input, which is basically, so all the bindings you have in bUnit for in Blazor for event handlers like on input and on click and so on and so forth, all of them have corresponding methods attached to them, like click, abort, activate, or in this case input, because that's the event we want to raise. And what do we want to input? We want to input a new value, and it's sort of that's something on the to-do list for bUnit to sort of to automatically be able to correctly convert between the different types. Usually for integers it's not a big problem, but because you can just pass in a string. But for date types, for example, it can be a bit more tricky because you actually have to pass in a correctly formatted date time as a string and not just pass in a date time object. So that's something I want to improve on at some point. Anyway, let's just pass in pizza.min value, minimum size. So we do that by triggering the input event. And then we need to assert that the pizza has actually had the size changed. So we can just do that by going into pizza.size and say you should now be pizza.minimum. Oh, no. So this should work because the pizza is passed into our configured pizza dialog component. Then we use bUnit to find the input form, or the input element inside the form, and we call the input event handler on it. And after we've done that, we can now assert that the pizza size has changed. So let's start by running the test and see that it fails. Well, it fails because it doesn't build. Okay, it does expect a string, so let's just toString this guy. And
Go!
and so this is a typical error you see when you're trying to raise an event handler that hasn't been bound yet. So the element does not have an event handler of the for the event on input, nor any other events. So it complains basically on this line that we are trying to raise the on input event handler, and there is no on input event bound. So let's go do that. And luckily, Microsoft already has provided the code for us, so we basically just use the bind and the on input modifier. So instead of having value explicitly set here, we should be able to do it like so. Okay, let's rerun all the tests and see if we pass now. We do. Okay, so this is the first step we have. So I think it's worth sort of considering what's going on here a little bit. So right now we are having a component which is sort of a single thing. It's the customized dialog pizza component, and it is passed in a pizza. Right now we are doing something. We are mutating the pizza we are passed into us. What's it called again? The configure pizza dialog component is mutating the pizza object that it is passed that is passed to it. I don't necessarily like that pattern for me, because the configure pizza dialog doesn't really have any knowledge necessarily about how or where it's being used. So but I guess because of the design and because of how the pizza object itself is mutable, all its properties is basically just a data transfer object. Everything in here is more or less, all the public properties at least are mutable. You can argue that the ID shouldn't even be that. But I would much rather have the configure pizza dialog have some sort of event handler, and I believe we have to add that at a certain point later in the tutorial, where we actually make the submit button work. I would rather have the submit button have an event callback that returns a new pizza, which has the changes on it instead. Because, I think we're going to continue with how the workshop is laid out, because otherwise I think we'll have to sort of reimagine a lot of things along the way. But it's something I think I would probably want to do a little bit differently if I was building this as an app from scratch. Anyway, let's see. Oh, I thought I was looking at a website. No, this is actually it. Okay, the next step: add additional toppings. The user should be able to select additional toppings on the configure pizza dialog. Add a list property for storing the available toppings. Initialize the list of available toppings by making an HTTP GET request to the toppings API. Okay. So I guess this is inside the configure pizza dialog. Okay, they want us to use the HTTP client. Okay. So let's just read through this section and plan our tests out. So add the following markup in the dialog body for displaying a drop-down list with the list of available toppings followed by the set of selected toppings. Put this inside the form class element below the existing div. Okay, so we have, that's quite a bit of code, so it's going to be quite a large component. Okay, so we have this dialog, and they want us to add it inside, but below that, extra toppings, and we're gonna have the toppings. Also add the following event handlers for the section for selection and removal. So okay, so basically you can add a topping and you can remove a topping by choosing it from the drop-down list. So I guess it, yeah, okay. So it looks a bit like this. Okay. So I guess the first step is actually to have a drop-down list of toppings that is rendered out, so we have something to select. So let's start by writing a test for that. I'm almost tempted to, because it's so much code, to move that out of the dialog container. They wanted it to be added. I guess it should be added inside the form. Oh, sorry, I'm in the, so inside the form, underneath the div, existing div. Okay, so this is the existing div, and so in here we need to add all of this code. Okay. And this will have a select drop down, and it will have a toppings list. Okay. And we also have a loading scenario where we show different options. We show that we are loading the options if we are getting them from the server, and when we have the maximum reached, because we've selected multiple pizza toppings, so we cannot have apparently more than 6 toppings, then we say you cannot select any more from the drop-down list. So we have sort of 3 different yeah, I'm sort of tempted to move this out into its own component, because there's quite a lot of things going on here. Yeah, why not? So toppings, selector dot razor. No, let's wait a bit by refactoring. Okay, I'm gonna stick to the plan. I don't like my components to become too long. I have too many details inside them. Okay, so okay, so let's start by just creating an assertion that when we are rendering this section out, it shows the toppings section as loading until it has actually has the toppings loaded from the web service. And that actually gives us a chance to sort of get into a bit about the asynchronous, how to deal with the asynchronous re-rendering of the components. Yeah. So coefficient is saying I have to find the same urge to refactor when debugging. Always one thing at the time. Exactly. Well, I think either way, in this case, I think it's fine to write the test first, and then we can always move test code and implementation details around. But it does seem like when I'm reading through this tutorial that some of the components and the index component, for example, index page, which we already refactored a bit, we didn't have the pizza card. We moved the pizza card into its own thing. They get quite large, and that's something from a test point of view, makes it a bit more complex, because then you have more, things, more wheels in motion at the same time. But also, if you have good naming for your components, then it makes good namings for the sections inside the component, then it makes sense to take it out. I do know if you have lots of components in your Blaze applications, that can be a performance penalty. So don't go completely overboard. But I do think, like we do with regular methods or inside our code, if we have a long method that basically have the single responsibility principle, it does more than one thing, then definitely extract some of the bits out of the method and into sub-methods or into methods that have a good descriptive name of what they're doing, and put the logic in there. So I do think the same rule apply for components, although the rule about having maybe less than 10 to 15 lines of code in your regular methods in C#, you might be able to need to go a little bit further, have a little bit more markup, but at least everything that is inside a same component should only really be doing one thing. Anyway, I digress. It's easy to get into these sort of rants, so bear with me and do stop me if I do. Okay. So basically, when there's no toppings, we only have this output and this down here. So let's go back to our test file. Let me put the test file below. We can collapse this one to have a bit more space to work with. So again, copy paste a bit. So dialog toppings shows as loading when what's it called again? The endpoint we are going to call. Where was it? There we go. When toppings endpoint has not returned yet. Okay. So for this, we are actually going to need to add something to our API. So our API has, right now it only has the get pizza specials async. So let's add another one. Let's add get, and you guessed it, toppings async. And what type does that return? It returns a list of toppings, like so. And I'm not gonna bother. This is the actual implementation that will be used when we run our code, but I'm just gonna not really gonna write tests for that. That would be a more of an integration test, and I think that's a bit beyond the scope here. So instead of specials, we're gonna return query the toppings endpoint, and it's gonna be topping instead. So that should take care of our production code. Let's go and implement that for our test as well. We do have and where are you? A fake pizza API. You are down here. And you should also be complaining that I don't have this interface implemented. So the fake pizza API should also be passed an enumerable of toppings. Why am I copy paste not working? Toppings, okay. And I guess we need to go over to, well, I can't use this method anymore. So use something like that, and then this dot toppings, and let's just assign toppings to that, to array. And you can create a read-only field for that, and just make it a read-only list of toppings. And yes, I could definitely just be using a logging framework for this. For now, I think this is just easier for everybody. It's not opinionated, doesn't really require anybody to really know from results, return toppings. Doesn't require anybody to really know what's going on inside a mocking framework. That said, in now actually I might have to take that back, because to more easily test different scenarios, well, I think I want to change this code a little bit, because I don't want it to just have the data by default. I want to be able to control that from my test, so I can both test that the data is not there and that it is there. And that does mean that we need to do a bit of extra work in our fake here, in our fake pizza. It's not a lot of work, but we need to sort of have a few task completion sources that we can use. So what we will do is we will create a let's call it an internal task completion source of I read only list pizza special, and pizza special task get set, or just get it, and say let's new one of those up, and we're gonna have a similar one for topping, our topping task, and it's gonna be updated over here. Okay, and instead of using task from results, we're gonna say pizza special task, and gonna go just return the task, and the same for toppings. Task dot task. Okay, so now I can go into my, and let's see, I believe this is where we are actually using the list of pizza specials and not passing that in. So instead I'm gonna get AutoFixture to just create this this for me. API, let's call it pizza special API, and we are still gonna pass that in here, API. And here I can say pizza special task, and I'm gonna say set completed, set result, and gonna pass in the pizza specials. So this is basically a little bit extra work we have to do to have task completion source receive our pizza specials and mark the task in the task completion source for pizza specials as completed. When we do that, then this test should behave the same. I might need to update this method as well. Yes, I do. And it would look like this. And what are you complaining about? No, I don't think that's right, but let's do a quick build. Sometimes the editor gets a bit confused. Yeah, no, this is not right. So when you're building Blazor solutions, it can be a good idea sometimes to just have build only error, because sometimes the editor just simply doesn't report correctly. Anyway, so if this is our fake pizza API, that's done. Okay, and this is empty, so it's complaining about that, but let's run the test and just make sure I haven't broken anything while refactoring. Everything still runs, great. Okay, So here we need a couple things. For this test, we need both pizza and we need our list of topping. So the toppings, yes, and we need the fake pizza API. So actually for the first test, what happened there? Okay. Yeah, the editor is wonky to say the least. For the first test, where we don't actually have any toppings, we are just gonna pass in the API and not set it as completed. So that looks a bit like so. Let's move this up here. We are setting the default size, doesn't really matter for this particular test. But before we can render, we need to register our pizza API such that the configure pizza dialog can get to that. So that's something we do in services. Gimme. Wow! Thank you very much for the follow, Irina, and welcome to the stream. Anyway, where was I? Oh yeah, we were registering our iPizza API, and we will be using the fake API. Okay. So because we don't set the task completion source for the toppings, that will basically never return. So it'll be sort of awaited forever, and then we should have we shouldn't have any problems as asserting that the loading text is shown. Woohoo! Oh my god. Hi Layla. And thank you for the raid. Lots of people coming in now. Well, great to have you all. How are you guys doing? And what were you doing over at Layla's channel? So, my name is Egil Hansen, and I am the creator of bUnit, and right now we are in the middle of going through the Blazor workshop that Microsoft created called the Blazing Pizza Workshop, and we are well on our way on the second save point, customizing a pizza, where we right now are writing, it's just to write a test for the toppings of the pizza. So if you love pizza, you get quite hungry by watching my stream these days. Yeah, exactly, Nick. So yeah, stick around, and I hope you will enjoy a little bit of test-driven development or pseudo test-driven development with bUnit and Blazor. Oh no, you had to. So Leila, you were trying to capture audio in C# and then had to resort to JavaScript. Oh man. Well, I guess it was in a context of Blazor as well. Otherwise, I don't see it making sense to use JavaScript. But yeah, it's I don't think it's trivial. I had some audio issues myself here on this stream in the beginning. So audio is not an easy thing. I hope it worked out. I'll definitely be checking out your stream, your replays later, Layla. It's amazing all the things you can do with C# these days, I think, and audio is not something I've never worked with, but I know, for example, that what's it called? The guy from .NET Rocks, Carl Franklin, he's done a lot of audio work with C# as well. So yeah, I hope chat is really great, and they help me out as well. So that helps a lot. Anyway, let's get back to our test. So we were basically looking at a test where we are just looking at what is the markup being shown on screen when we are loading our toppings, but we haven't actually gotten them from the web service yet. So let's start by writing a test for that. So here we have the configure pizza dialog being rendered. We have added our fake pizza API. And now I want to assert that my markup matches the expected. And yeah, that is a bit wonky. So we will have a div. We will have a label inside of that. We will not have this bit. We will have the select option that will say it's disabled and it is loading. We will also we will have the end div down here. And what else will we have? Oh, we will also have the list of toppings that is currently empty at this stage. And there will be no toppings there, so it'll just be an empty tag. We can actually just close it up on this line like so. Okay, so this test should fail now. Oh. Oh, that rate notification came in a bit late. And here we have another follow. Thank you, Nick, for the follow. And Blaze and Mr. Magoo, hello, welcome to the stream. And you have a question. Can you explain how you get confidence in the test you write? How do you prevent bugs in tests? There is a lot of code here being written just to allow you to test. So a lot of code being written just to allow me to test. So the only thing the only code I've written for this test is the fake pizza API, and I could write a test for that. So if you have code to sort of support your test, you might sometimes want to write test for that. In this case, this is super simple code, I believe. I don't know if you were here on the stream before, a little bit earlier, but what I sometimes do, and most of the time I do that at work, I would use something like in substitute Telerex just a mock or MOQ to basically mock out my iPizza API. So I don't consider that test I've written to make my test work, because if I had to test that, I would basically be testing my testing the mocking framework itself. And this is basically, there's no branching logic in this. This is just a way for me to be able to say, control when the get pizza specials API returns the data. So in this particular case, I don't feel a need to write a specific unit test for this fake pizza API. If it becomes more complex, I might want to do that at some point. But that might also be an indication that I need to reconsider my fake and the implementation of it. In this particular case, can you explain how to get confidence to test? I think it's a matter of experience, but I think the first step is always to have your test fail, see your test fail. And if you've seen your test fail and you then make them go green, make them work, then it's then you have confidence, at least in that case, that scenario. I also like to use an approach. I think I picked that up from either Robert C. Martin, aka Uncle Bob, or maybe it was Martin Fowler. I can't remember. But they both advocate taking very small steps. And I believe it's Robert C. Martin that talks about always start with when you're writing tests, start with the most simple, the most basic concept that you can, and not like if in this case we could be writing a test that would basically test this scenario where we have the list and we print out the list of customers, but we're starting with the most simple, the most basic thing we can figure out to test, and start with that, and then build a unit test for that. When we've done that, we can then we can then go on and write a new test on top of that. So usually you always pick the next test case to write that is the most simple you can think of, and then build on top of that. That usually also leads you to design more simple code, because you don't have to think about all the edge cases up front. If you start with the simple thing first, then you sort of have that out of the way, and you don't have to. You already know that is there. Make sense? Oh, it's a great question, and thank you for asking, Mr. Magoo. It is something, I've been at the previous employer I was at. I also taught test-driven development internally, and people can pick up test-driven development or testing practices quite fast, but getting good at it, there's really no shortcut for just practicing. You have to have written a substantial test suite, and sort of felt the pain of having to maintain that to really get good at writing good unit tests. So in this case, well, first thing we need to do in this case at least is to get things to compile. And it seems that, is it because I have the parentheses in here that it's getting confused? It might be.
Oh, gimme.
Ah. Twitch Loft. Thanks for following. So this might be a problem with the... So let me just comment out this. Oh, no, that shortcut doesn't work in the Razor editor. Okay, let's do it the old-fashioned way. Like so, and see if it can build now. Ah, yeah, build succeeded. So there's something in here that is... Oh, no, that should be right. That should be right. What if I remove those parentheses? Does it build now? No. Let's just try to delete a few things. Weird. Okay, let's start off with some basic stuff. This is the danger of being on the edge. Okay. Nope. Edge of what the Razor editor can actually support. Hello, Thomas. Thanks for joining. So that builds. Okay. Let's add our label. I'm gonna move you down here and build again. That also builds. Add the select and end of the select. Builds. Also builds. Interesting. Let's see if this is the culprit. Also builds. Interesting. So now I'm just missing this part. I wonder what was wrong before. Okay. So because I'm starting a new tag, this inline Razor syntax doesn't work. Can I wrap it in parentheses? Like so. Nope. Hey, anybody in the chat room has an idea of how to do these inline without it complaining? Like inline Razor syntax? Sorry, inline Razor fragment? Not for multi-line, but apparently because I have more than one tag. So this is completely fine. It doesn't complain about that. And I've even up here, I have multiple, but I just have the one element. So I think, Mr. Magoo, that it's complaining that I am basically adding another element. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to create an inline render fragment using the inline render fragment syntax. And I'm in a Razor editor basically. And this works. But if I add the last bit I need, if I add this one, like so, then you can see the wrapping in text tags. Is it just like so? It compiles, which makes sense because I am in a single nesting. I have a single outer tag. Okay, so I'm curious if the text element is actually printed out. Let's see. So if I run my test, it's gonna fail because we are not doing any of this. And let's jump in here. So actually,
Oh, gimme.
No, that's great. Okay, thank you for the help, Mr. Magoo. So I see that the Blazor renderer is actually stripping out the text tags. Okay, that's good to know if you have multiple. That's good to know if you have multiple inline elements, then you can use the text. Ah. Yeah, I don't really want to control white space. I just want to capture everything. But that's fine. Oh, good point, Nick. Let's try that. So Nick suggests using curly brackets like so. Oh god, like so. Okay, let's see if it builds. Nope, it doesn't like that. Is this what you're suggesting, Nick? Oh, so I have to do... Oh, okay, we have to move that up here, maybe. So now it doesn't seem like it's actually recognizing this as a render fragment. Oh, it's missing an opening and closing. So should I wrap all of this is in parentheses? Or like so, maybe? No. I think for now, unless you have more suggestions, guys, I'm gonna stick with the text version. Oh, okay. I'm gonna try that one. You guys joined just at the right time. Otherwise, I would still be sitting here playing around with this. Okay, so I went too far back. Okay, so okay, we know this works, but and move that to a new line, and I should remove that. I don't think it will work. Or will it? Building.
Go!
Yes, this works. So I don't know what we like better, but let's leave it for now. Play around with that later. Can I even have this up on its own line and then have this one down here? And does this work then? No. Has to be like so, I guess. Yep.
Go!
Actually, let me turn down Homer a little bit. He's quite loud. No, and I do agree. I actually, yeah, this is gonna trip people up. I think I'm gonna go with the text version you suggested, Blazer, Mr. Magoo. So Blazer, Mr. Magoo is saying that somebody on the ASP.NET Core team doesn't really like that add syntax. So let's just stick with this. I think this is pretty nice and intuitive to work with as well. And just need to move this up here. Yeah, something like that. Okay, so let's get on with the test. So actually, this is not quite what we want to do. We want to, because we are getting. I'm actually just interested in the thing inside the dialog box. I'm not interested in the. I'm interested in the second and third div in here. I am tempted to give it its own class just to make it easier to grab it out for testing. So I think that should be fine to do. So if we wrap this, we want to render, we wrap that in a class toppings. Toppings group, let's call it toppings group. And we can select that out instead. So let's just find that. And the toppings group should have this inside it. So this is sort of a little bit of cheat. This would actually, I think that will make the test pass. And we can just verify that.
Go!
No, actually, that broke quite a few things. Okay, let's see what's going on here. Show the toppings as loaded. Okay. Yeah, I need to add the toppings group around it as well. So that solves my need for having this one here, and I can just go like that. So now I have my toppings group, and let's run that test again.
Woohoo!
So that test passes, but now we have another test breaking, and let's see what that is.
Go!
Have a problem with. Let's see. So it's basically complaining that that is my test about the pizza input slider up here. So I actually want to do the same thing up here. I want to wrap this in its own div. It's actually already inside its own div, so I'm just going to call that size group, and that's going to make it a bit easier for us to work with the test there. So instead of finding the form, we're just going to find the size group, and that will be class size group. So this is sort of a great example of if you want to test individual parts of a component, a larger component, then you make it much easier on yourself by having something you can select out and work with on your test individually, so that you don't have to understand and assert against the full markup every time in every test. Okay, so now all our tests pass and we basically have the loading, but we're actually not doing any loading at this point. So but that's okay, because this is basically what the test said. So the next step is, I think logically, the next step is to actually display the list of toppings loaded from the API. And well, when we write that test, we will inadvertently have to break the other test and implement the logic on top of that to make that work and also make the loading work. So I think that is that's actually not a bad thing to do at all. So the next test we will write will take this data in. It'll take our pizza, it'll take our fake pizza, and it'll take our list of topping. It's gonna call toppings, yep. And here we first have to add our API. We have to render the pizza. And oh, good. It's quite confused. Let me move this out. Really, really looking forward to the team working on the new Razor editor to get that out of experimental phase and into something stable that will help a lot with these types of writing these types of tests. Okay, so here we want to take our API and we want to set the toppings task to set results, and we want to pass in the toppings we have had generated by autofixture. So for anybody who didn't join the previous stream, am I using the new one? What do you mean, coefficient? The new Razor editor. I think I am. Let me double check. I'm pretty sure I am, because it's called preview features. Let's see. Yeah, enable experimental Razor editor. It's so it's especially the inline Razor fragments that are giving it issues. Where when I hit you can see here, if I remove the semicolon and then add it again, it tries to be helpful and format things for me. That's not really what we want in this case, at least. So yeah, I think that's something they probably need to work on. But yeah, it's still very much work in progress, and I'm really, really cheering them on, because I think in general this is a very, very nice way to write these types of tests I'm writing here, where you actually have real markup you want to pass around, you want to verify. And if you wanted to write this in just plain C# code, you had to escape a lot of things, and you had to sort of build your strings. Here you can see we're just creating a Razor fragment, a render fragment, that we pass in, and it's a super elegant way of rendering. Also, you can just I have a special method called render, where you are basically able to pass in a render fragment that will be rendered. So there's also all of that building of the input parameters list that we have with bUnit, that is just much more natural to do it in this syntax. So I hope that they get that sorted. Anyway, so let me change the name of that test. So dialog displays toppings in selects. Let's call it a drop down instead. When loaded from server. Okay, from API. Okay, so basically what we're doing here is we take our API and we take the toppings task and we set the results to the list of the toppings that we've had generated for us. Then we register our API with the services collection, and then we ask our bUnit to render a configure pizza dialog component, and now we can update our. Now we can do another assert here where we want to again match on the markup, but this time we basically want to have this bit of code in here instead of this select. So, and what is interesting here is that because we have a list of toppings coming in as well, it will actually do the generation of all the things like the full list there. You can argue that this is sort of overkill. You're duplicating the code you have both places, both in the test and the in component. I would accept that. So the alternative would be to go in and verify that we have a number of options being rendered out that matches the number of toppings that the service is going to return. And yeah, and then we would maybe, actually, I guess what we could do is let's write actually, so this is sort of example of actually where I might have gone a little bit too far and written a more complex test initially than I needed to, because what we actually want to do is we might want to just say write a test that just checks if there's no toppings returned from the server. So this is sort of probably not something that should happen, but let's write that test because that will allow us to basically assert on all this markup, and then we can afterwards do an assertion, write a test that just verifies that the number of options are being added, and maybe that there is some sort of formatting going on. You could even go so far to write a toppings component that is an option where we can just verify that a single topping passed into an options component. But I think that again it might be overkill. So let's just gonna comment that out. And let's just start over with that one and create the more simple test first. Let's see if, nope, that shortcut doesn't work. Have to manually displace. Let's display empty toppings list when none are returned from server. Okay. So instead of having just going to set array empty topping. So we're going to return the empty list of toppings, and in this case we're not going to expect anything in here. We're just going to expect something like this. So let's run that test and see if that works. It does not. Toppings selected. Oh, we never expect to have any event bindings in our code.
No!
And the test fails, which is completely fine. And if we scroll down and have a look, we can see that the actual markup is what we have hard-coded right now with the loading message, but what we expect there to be is a select element. So now we actually have to go back to our code into our component and implement the sort of switch between loading state and non-loading state. So like we are doing in our index component where we are getting our pizza API injected into us. Let's do the same thing up here. By the way, I am debating whether to actually keep all the code and injects and all the other sort of attribute at the top of the class and then have my markup below. What are you guys doing in your Blazor projects? Let's try this version in this component, see how that works out. So we have a read-only list, yep, of toppings, and what am I missing? Oh, we have to actually get the data. We do that on initialize.
Oh, gimme.
Ah. Amelie? Sorry about that if I missed your name off, but thank you very much for the follow. Hope you stick around. Oh, Nick, the question was, do you keep all the add code and adds inject up at the top of the file, or do you put them down? Like do you have add code below your markup or above your markup? I kind of, a little bit of a part of me, if I want to not use code behind files, but just keep everything in my .razor file, I kind of, I think I like that having them together at the top. Yeah. Yeah, I see there could be a point to that, Mr. Magoo, just to keep, so Mr. Magoo is saying he keeps the code in his CS file, in the code behind file, and then markup and razor file. I think I kind of like the idea of having them together, but I also like the idea of having just like this component is sort of on sort of bordering on being too big for my taste. I would probably like to maybe have subcomponents for each of the input form elements because they're sort of a different concern. Okay, so Nick says he prefers to actually not have the code, the C# code in Razor files at all, but this is basically what people are doing in JavaScript, so he sort of follows that pattern. Yeah, and I agree with Blazor, Mr. Magoo, on that. I also think that if you have lots of code, lots of both C# code and markup, then your component becomes large and it becomes hard to follow what's going on. So yeah, and so actually let's do that. Let's pull these things out into its own component, into its own C# file, just to show folks on stream who might not be familiar with this what that actually means. So we're gonna create a configure pizza dialog.razor.cs, if I remember correctly, and it has to be a partial class. And instead of using the and yeah, definitely coefficient. That's absolutely a big win. That there's less intelligence issues. Oh, can it? Cool. So, do I just? Is there a refactor somehow? Sometimes. Yeah. Oh, maybe it's because I already created that. Well, anyway, let's pull this in here. Nope. Let's pull it in here. And now I just need to move the inject as well. Let's have them together over there. And we're gonna do a public, and it's gonna be inject Nope. Did I just create a pizza API in here? No, I don't want that. I wanted to get the right interface. What? Let's see. What namespace are you in? Oh, that's a services namespace. Okay. Ah, I see. So yeah, that's a problem. Okay, well, then no, that's actually not a problem at all. It's just a matter of who provides the data. So okay, so last stream I was sort of wondering why we wouldn't have the configure pizza dialog in the component library according to the tutorial, and the reason I couldn't really find a good reason for it. Now I kind of see the reason. The reason is that the pizza API or the HTTP right now it's defined up here in services. We could actually, there's nothing really, no reason why the services shouldn't be in the component library as well, or maybe in a completely. Normally, I guess I would have that in an infrastructure library. So let's move them down here actually into the component library. I think that's a good place for that to live. It should still work inside of the API because the client has a dependency on the component library, and well, we could actually might even belong better down in the shared library because both the component library and the client library has a dependency on the shared. So I think having it down here is actually not a completely terrible idea. And that also means that my pizza API is now available to me in this project. And no, we don't want to call get from JSON. Instead, we will just call API dot get topping async. Okay. No. I don't want to. Wait a minute. I have to inherit from component base, of course. Like so. Okay. So, okay. Now we need to change things around. Now we need to add some extra logic in here, and thankfully somebody's written that for us. So let me copy paste that in. And that was these bits. Oh no, just these bits. Okay. And the formatter did a semi-okay job here. Let me turn off word wrap. Like so. Let's just wait with that one because we haven't actually created a test for that yet. Okay. And in theory, we haven't implemented this as well, so let's just delete that. So I think this should make our test pass. Because Yep, that should make the test pass. Nope. Still need a few more things. Let's remove that one as well. And toppings is null. Let's use C#5 syntax on that. So if toppings is null, then, and indicate that it actually can be null, then we will display the loading. Otherwise, we will display the empty select dropdown.
No!
Oh no, a few tests broke. Let's see what went wrong here. And oh yeah, so a few of the previous tests also require us to register the API. So let's just go do that. I guess at this point, I will just create a constructor. So for this, it's going to be the configure pizza dialog constructor. In the constructor, we can set up the, we can just add a fake service that we will have registered every time we do this, unless we actually do it again. So we don't have to do it in all the tests where they just need something. So I'm just gonna new it up here, fake, and pass it in. If I register it again as I do down here, then it will just replace it as far as I remember. Let's try it out. See if it solves some of the problems. Method must have a return type. Oh, tests. Now it's a constructor. Okay. That was quite a bit of code, but let's just go back and have a look. So basically what we have done now, we have these two tests. The first test, and we can actually skip this part here. The first test verifies that when we render our configure pizza dialog, our toppings group will just show as being loaded right now until the web service that provides the toppings actually respond. When we have a result, and let me actually make this a little bit easier to work with. So private, I'm just going to do some refactoring while I talk. So I'm just going to add this API up here and have it as a property, and I'm going to go API equals that should make the code a bit more clean, like so. Okay, so nothing's changed here. Stop reformatting for me. Up here, this is fine, this is fine. Now I can skip having this passed in and simply use my API property that has already been registered. Okay, sorry, let me try that again. So we verify that we show a loading message when there's nothing returned yet from the topics endpoint. And when we actually set a result on our API, obviously empty in this case, then we just get this out. So that's the first two tests. The next test is to try to render out a single or one or two, a couple of options. Doesn't really matter how many. So for that, we can comment this in again, like so. And in this case, we can pull this one out and instead here say API. And for those of you who weren't part of the previous stream, what we are actually using, where this data is coming from, it's coming from something called autofixture, where autofixture, with autofixture, there's an extension called autofixture xUnit, that is where this attribute comes from. This is sort of a way to get data automatically, any data generated for you that you need for your tests. So for this test to actually work, I don't really care what my pizza is. I just care that the properties in the pizza are correctly mapped into my component, or I care that the toppings I pass from my API are actually the ones being correctly rendered out to the user. So this takes away all the arrange step of setting up the test data for me. Sometimes I have specific needs where I, for example, up here in the slider, well, I get a pizza in, but since data is automatically generated, the size variable is something that doesn't really make sense. So what I do is I set the default size to something, okay? To sort of do a little bit of arranging, because the size is important in this case, because I want to change it. I want to have it from something to set it to something else. And I want to be able to sort of know that I had it at something and now I moved it to something else, and now I can verify that it is actually correctly updated. So what is happening in here is we are going to get a list of toppings, and now I want to basically go in and just pull out the select drop down. I don't really care about all the other things around here. So let's get the select out. And it's called custom select. We can use that. Oh, actually, we can just give me the select element. That's just going to be 1, and that will simplify our assert quite a bit. And we can remove all of that. And now I'm basically saying I expect to have this printed out. And if we run the test, we should get a failing test because we are not actually printing out any options yet. And if we go have a look here, zoom in a bit, you can see that right now we're only getting this markup out, and that makes sense because that's the only thing we're rendering, but we are actually expecting to get 3 additional options added, and they should have whatever data that is in there. So one thing that AutoFixture does for us, it will by default add 3 items to a list if it's been asked to generate something that is enumerable. So in this case, it's going to be 3 toppings. And so if we jump back to our implementation here, and I'll just go here and cheat and pull this one out and put that in here, like so. Now the test should pass again, and we can have a pretty high confidence that the rendered markup is correct for this case. So we haven't actually implemented the logic where we are able to click on our toppings yet and select them. So let's wait and come back to verifying that the maximum reach message is displayed instead of the drop down when that happens. Okay. So now we want to have a test that verifies that when a topping is selected, it is added to the added to the pizza's toppings list. The pizza we are passing in this case, it will be this pizza. It's added to that pizza's list. What it might actually, because the pizza's object is generated from AutoFixture, it might actually already contain some toppings because that's just the default for AutoFixture. But we can just zero that out before we render out before we ask to render our configure pizza dialog component. So let's create the test first, and let's have a look here. Okay, so when topping is selected, it is added to pizza's toppings list. Okay. So in this case, we're just going to set the result so we have something to select. We're going to render the component, and then we are going to find our select element. So this is going to be the same here. Here we're going to find the select element, and we're gonna, and what is the event they want us to use? They want us to use the onChange event. So we're gonna say change, and I guess I want to actually change to an ID in my toppings list. So if I just take the toppings and take the first item there, and then take the ID of that topping. Let me actually put that into its own line just to make it easier to follow. First topping. And then I can say first topping. So we want to change to first topping.id. And let's keep that on the same line. And now this is our arrange step. Now we can do an assertion and make sure that we actually get the topping set in our pizzas list. So I'm gonna just go into toppings and say clear that out, because it will by default have some values added to it from AutoFixture. Okay, so now we can go here and say pizza dot toppings dot should contain, and I think we can pass in a lambda where we say ID topping ID. So pizza topping and topping are two different types. Okay, let's just go and have a quick look at that. So we have pizza topping. Oh, so that contains the topping, and topping is just okay. So instead of actually comparing by ID, should contain, we can just say dot topping, and that should be equal to our first topping. So here we have an assertion that verifies that we have had the first topping added to the toppings list in our pizza. Okay. So let's get a test to fail first.
Go!
Going back to your question, Blazer, Mr. Magoo, it's actually quite possible and not at all uncommon to write a test that never can fail or cannot fail. So the advantage of writing test driven development is obviously that you force yourself to write the test first, and then you see it fail, and then you see it go green afterwards. If you're writing tests for your code after the fact, after the code has actually been written, then you need to take extra care to verify that the logic in your test is right and that it will fail if the conditions you're checking for are not there. So, but in this case, I think we are safe. So now we need to do a few things. We need to go and set up the onChange event handler, and actually I can just briefly show it actually gets a hint from bUnit on that. It says this element does not have an event handler for the event onChange on it. So that gives us a hint of where we need to go to. So the code tells us to add this event handler, topping selected. So let's go do that. That's gonna be this one, and it's gonna call add topping. I guess we need that as one as well. Like so. And it will see if it will use the find method to check if if the topping hasn't been added already, and then it will add the topping. It's kind of interesting. I guess that's something that's going to come up later, because these are not used in right now. We just add the pizza topping with the topping. So that was actually a good idea to use that as the assertion. Anyway, use the property topping instead of using the topping ID. So now we just need the binding, and the binding was the on change. Yep, back here. And we have the select bind. Yeah, that should be it. So that should work, right? Let's try and see.
Go!
Okay. So it's trying to cast our int here. So right here, I'm just passing in an int, and that doesn't always work. So let's toString that for it. And like I mentioned before, this is something I want to improve at some point. As there's actually a feature or feature request, not feature request. There's a issue on that on the bUnit repo to make this more intelligent. To basically have the change method or any of the other methods that take input parameters that they want to pass to the event handler to actually sort of figure out what is the data type and how do I format that correctly so that will pass through the event binding system in Blazor. So we don't have to use toString, for example. Let's see if this makes the test happy.
Go!
No, nope. We are getting a different error this time around. Index was out of range. Must be a non-negative value. And where is that coming from? It's coming from here. So I think I understand. Let's in try pass. So we are trying to convert our value to an integer, and if that integer is less than or bigger than or equal to 0, we add that to the called add toppings with the toppings. Oh, so this is index based, but I am guessing that the error that the ID we're actually passing in here is not at index, but it is the ID of the topping. That's interesting. Okay. So we are not. Okay, so we are actually. So the value we are supposed to pass is not the ID of the topping, but instead the index in the toppings list. I wonder why they use that instead of the ID. Yeah. Okay, no problem. We can work with that. So instead of passing in the ID actually, let's just pass in 0, because we want to have the first, we want to select the first topping and try run again. That should be convertible to integer, and it is indeed. Okay, so now we have verified that the pizza's toppings, when selected, are being passed in. We can, just for kicks, we could actually maybe try to select a few. Let's select number 1 as well. And let's change that code a little bit. So now that I only use that one place, I think it's fair to basically say, well, I actually expect the toppings array of 0 to be there, the first topping, and the second topping. And yeah, there's no reason to really Okay, so this test verifies that when you select one or more toppings, then they are added to the toppings list. And so there's actually a bit of extra logic going on in here. We also we don't want to have the same topping twice. So even though this code is actually written, we might want to write normally if we were doing test room development and not just copy pasting code from the workshop guide, we might want to. Let me actually remove all of those. There's no reason to really have that extra extra check. So in this case, I just want to write a test where I basically say, well, then the same topping can't be added twice. Only be added one Nick, you do have a point, but apparently the good folks who built this workshop, and Nick is saying we might want to have double cheese or double bacon. I agree, but apparently it's not something the folks behind the Blazing Pizza workshop agree with. So I'm pretty sure that this line of code here sort of verifies that, but we can write a test to prove to see if my assertion is correct. Yeah, future creep, indeed. So I wanted to contain pizza toppings, but I also want the count to be just one. So I want the count to be 1, and I want it to only have the pizza I've added, even though I called the add. Basically, I triggered the change twice. Okay, let's run that test as well. I expect that to pass because we actually didn't need to add any code to make that work. Yeah, I generally don't. I think the reason why we're using find here is because there's no what's it called, I equatable, or there's no overriding of the top on the toppings element. I'm pretty sure actually if this was a record, and if we're going C#9, I guess this could be a record, then we can just say contains and just ask, do you actually have this topping in you? And if you do not, I see why they are doing this, because we actually have to do a predicate, because again, pizza topping is not the same as topping. What would you use instead, Nick? Instead of find? I see. So you don't like it being inline. You want to see like something like this, existing topping. And if existing topping is null, yeah, I think I would probably also use any, just because it's more clear what's going on here. So something like this, has topping already. Has topping already. And I would, oh no, not negated like that. Yeah, I kind of like that better. So basically we're trying to find an existing pizza topping. Well, let's run the test and see if we broke anything.
Woohoo!
You would add the logic to the pizza class. Yeah, actually I agree completely with that. So because, but yeah, so that's I think that sort of takes us over to, no, that's not the file I wanted to go to. That would be, this is basically just a DTO kind of thing where we're just moving data around. I agree, Nick, that I would put that in, I would put all of the maintenance of the specials and the pizza toppings and all of that I would put into, if I had some logic around that, I would put that into this component, because then I could test that domain logic without actually having to write bUnit test. I could just write regular C# unit test. The other problem with this code here is that everywhere in my code where I might be adding toppings to the toppings list, I will need to check this invariant. I will need to verify that there's not already added a topping there. So yeah, I don't really like this code either. How do you, so Mr. Magoo is saying a pizza could have the same topping multiple times, but the UI says not. Yeah, okay. So your point is that the pizza class, the business object representing a pizza, could have the same topping multiple times, but what we want to display in the UI is a distinct list of toppings. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I actually haven't. This is my first time going through this workshop, so we might be surprised, and all of these small changes we are making along the way might actually mess some things up for us later on. But it could definitely be. I would think that if I've added toppings, the cheese twice, at least the cheese would be future creep. Well, why not? We have the time, right? The cheese. If I've added cheese twice, at least that would be maybe like a 2x cheese in the toppings list below. So you're getting me sidetracked, coefficient. But yeah, I would agree. I don't really like DTOs. I like to keep my business logic next to my data so I can encapsulate the data. So I completely agree. This is probably not what we want here, to be honest. Maybe we would, but let's soldier forward and accept. Oh, I don't really like that syntax highlighting here as well. That makes it kind of hard to read. I guess it's two ampersands at the same place here. Oh well. So we've verified we can only add a pizza once. Okay. So now we actually also want to have the pizza topping show up in the nice looking list below, sort of to show what has been selected. So to do that, we need to write a test for the toppings list. Okay. So when there are no toppings selected, that list should be empty. And if there are toppings added or passed in to begin with, it should display that. And so there's like free test, but I think we already covered the first one where we basically have a empty list. There's no toppings printed out. So we have maybe two test cases. The first test case is where there is already a topping added to the pizza. There's nothing in the code that indicates that isn't a possibility, so let's write that test first. I think that's more simple than having the lodging, the lodge. No, actually, we might. I think what I'm going at. Okay, so I guess no, we already have the binding between the pizzas, so we should just actually write a test that shows that when we have toppings in the pizza toppings list, it's printed out. Okay. Okay, back to code. So copy and paste. Like so. Okay, so when toppings added to pizza shows are displayed in toppings list. Yeah, that works, I guess. So let's do this. If we don't clear this one, I believe there should be some free toppings already there. So now we have a list of toppings, and inside of that I expect there to be this many toppings. So let's do cut.find toppings, and we want the topping, and I'm gonna say find all. Seems like I need to recharge my my keyboard here. It's being a bit flaky. Okay, so toppings divs. 1 second. Let me have a look. Oh, never mind. It's just my phone that keeps vibrating. And it does so because it's my 10-minute warning that I have to finish up. So I think we can actually make this test pass before we end today's stream. Okay. So here we are finding all the toppings from toppings in the list here, and let's just start simple and assert that there are as many as there are should be toppings dot count. And I suspect this test will fail.
Go!
And it does. So we expected to have 3, but we found 0. Okay. And I probably need that clear. No, actually, let's actually just change code a bit. So I'm gonna go and instead with my pizza, and I just want to look into the toppings that are already in the pizza and see if that is rendered out, because we already verified that we add items to that list when we select one. So now we just need to verify that it actually displays them right. So let me just run my test again before I make changes. Wait a minute, did I make a mistake here? Oh yeah, don't have to set that anymore. Okay. So
Go!
yeah, we're still expecting that to be free, but found 0. And that's because by default, AutoFixture will add free items to a list. And there's a list of toppings inside the pizza, so that's going to be added automatically. Okay, so let's go and implement that code. So that looks something like this. And it has a lot of details in it. It has an on-click event as well, which we'll call remove topping with the topping API captured, with the topping captured. I do not believe that code has been added yet. Let's add that just so we get things compiling, and then we can write a test for the deletion as well. Okay. Let's see if the test passes now. So it does. So this test case here. We are not going in and comparing markup. We could easily write that markup and repeat that markup in here in this test. I think it's sometime, you can do both. And I think this is also, I know, for example, when I've seen C# Fridge over on his channel use bUnit, he generally prefers not to use markup matches as much and more do some pinpoint testing, or like pull out different attributes of the markup he wants to verify. Like, for example, do I have the amount of elements in there I expect to see? I think we can also show a few different approaches. If you want, you've sort of seen this many times, you can do that yourself. You can sort of go in and copy paste this in and have that instead. Now, what we do want to do is we want to hook up and verify that we can actually, when we have more than 6 toppings, that we cannot add any more. So that's another test here we need to write. So I guess it is basically a mix of these two tests. So if I, just to make it very explicit what's going on, so we start by clearing. If when 6 toppings are added, the drop down is no more than 6 toppings can be added. Okay. So actually, if I don't clear this and I get my additional toppings here, and I already have 3 added. Yeah, no, this is not super great code because so I'm still learning AutoFixture at work. I'm not sure if there's a quick way to get AutoFixture to actually give me 6 toppings, because we also have a rule we can't have multiple toppings at the same time. So if I only get 3 toppings from AutoFixture, then I basically have to have 3 toppings already to get up to 6 to basically see my drop down being disabled. So if I combine that with my pizza who already has 3 toppings and I add the 3 more from my drop down, but now I would rather just have one long list of all 6 toppings. So AutoFixture generate list of objects. Yeah, that's right, Nick. It defaults to 3, but I would like to have 6 or more, I guess. Is it possible? Oh, I hate that site. It's just stealing off of XSPDF. It's just basically reusing what is there from. It's just finding things on Stack Overflow and basically putting stuff up in the top of the search results. Yeah, I don't want to go in and create a customization. What does Mark Seaman have to say about this? No. Okay, so for now, I'm just gonna cheat and say toppings 1, toppings 2. Then I get 2 lists of toppings, and I'm gonna try to figure out how to make that prettier for the next stream. Yeah, Nick, that's right. I think the right approach would be maybe to add a customization of sorts to auto fixture. But I think for now I'm gonna skip that. What I want to do still is I still want to clear them just so I can actually in my arrange step here I can call this method 6 times. It might seem like a lot of extra code to add in there, but I think it's nice to make it explicit for people who's going to read the test. So let's just pull out the toppings drop down and then call drop down change 1 2 3 4 5 6. So it's gonna be 1 2 3 4 5. I'm gonna need one more. Okay, and after that I expect that my it's gonna look a bit different. It's gonna be where is it? My first div will only have a div named maximum reached. Okay, so I think that's gonna be the last test we can get done today. So our cut I will find my component on the test and I'm gonna find the toppings group. Find the toppings group, and inside of that we have a div, the first div, and then I expect that to have extra toppings and then just a div. Okay. So the first div, and that markup should match something like this, and it should also match, oh god, it should also match, have that one in it. Oh, here we need to add the text and add that and that to have a single object, single element to target, and we can move that up to its own line, and no, keep it like that. Okay, thank you, Coefficient. Thank you for hanging out and providing feedback. I love that. So please do come back and help out in the chat. That's a great help. Helps everything here on stream for me. Have somebody to talk to. Okay, so let's run that test and get a build error. Where am I missing something? I'm missing something there. Okay, still. Comma, okay, getting closer. Nope. Okay, I need to do a to array on this. Okay. Bit of boilerplate code going on in this test. Could probably be written a bit nicer, but okay. So we have a few tests breaking now, and it is because it's doing a lot of expect. So let's just go up and remove, ignore some of these parts. We don't really, in this test, we don't care about this element here with the topping. So I'm just going to go diff ignore on that guy. And also on this fella as well. We don't really care about that in here. Let's see if that didn't fix those two tests.
Go!
Yep, now we just have no more than 6 elements can be added. And we expect it to have maximum reached. So let's go and implement that code. So copy paste in here. And if you are wondering what I'm doing with the diff ignore, that's not something that is standard HTML. That is something that is part of bUnit, part of the, that's not the website I want to show you, bUnit, part of the semantic comparer in bUnit. You are not very helpful. Yes, go to that website, please. Part of the semantic comparer in bUnit, where you have many different customizations options like ignoring elements or ignoring attributes or changing how white spaces is handled and so on and so forth. So this just allows us to isolate things a bit more. Anyway, let's see if our test passes now.
Go!
Oh, it does not. Oh, I forgot my div. I need to have that as well. So yet again, actually, we can just skip the, because it always includes the element you actually select. It always include that in the markup when you have to match. So that just means that we can skip the text content and we have our test passing. Okay. So I think that is going to be it for today. A little bit over time, but I should be okay. So thank you very much, guys, for hanging out, and I'll be back next Wednesday where we will continue from this point on, and I think it should be possible for us to get all the way through the customization implementation and get that out of the way. So yeah, let's go and see if there's somebody we can rate. I see the Visual Studio channel is online. I wonder what they're up to. So let's jump over there and say hello. And thank you again, everybody, for joining. I hope to see you again next week. Oh, sorry, not next week, but next Wednesday at 1 p.m. Here in general GMT time zone. So that's going to be early in the morning for you guys in the States and late in the evening for the rest of the world that are not in here in Europe. But I hope to see you again, everybody, and have a good day wherever you are. Cheers. Bye-bye.